Everybody, and welcome to my channel. If you're new, welcome. If you're back for some more, welcome back, guys. So glad to see you here. What I'm going to be talking about in this video is a few experiences that I've gone through. So it's about three stories, three and some change, and this is going to be pertaining to the demonic experiences that I've had. Now, I know that a lot of people are curious about things such as the afterlife and stuff like that. What I've come to believe is Uncle Tom is not haunting you. Basically, he is sleeping, he knows nothing, he sees nothing, he remembers nothing, and he's waiting for the day that Jesus is to come back just like everybody else. And if there's some that God takes up and he decides to take up, that's his decision. But the majority of people, once we pass away, I believe that we are in a sleep type mode and waiting for that day. So anyways, I'm going to be getting into a few things, like I said, about three stories and some change. And that little the change is going to be some experiences I had, such as what doctors would call sleep paralysis, and I believe it to be experiences that is pertaining to demons and us not being able to move, rather than our whole body is asleep versus our brain is still conscious and we could still see. I don't think so, but and I'll tell you why. So three little stories and three of the bigger ones. Basically, uh, the sleep paralysis times were, one, I was at my mom's house and I was sleeping in the bed with my little brother, and I fell asleep. I remember right before falling asleep, we were listening to some stories on a radio station. It was like some Christian stories. And I was telling him about certain things in the Bible that I've learned. And we went to sleep. And I woke up, but I could not move. And I was on my back, but I was leaning a little bit towards my left. And I could see in the closet there were dark figures, and they were crawling upside down out of that closet and reaching for me. I could not move, I could not talk, I couldn't really say anything. Now I can blurt out certain words, but there was only one word or name that I could not say, and then as soon as I got to say the name, it's like they got sucked in, and that was the name of Jesus. So I mean, and you can see it worldwide. People that have these experiences, there's only one name that breaks that away from them and makes them jolt awake. Their whole body just becomes aware, and then you're out of this sort of like numbness. I don't know how to even describe it, but people sometimes have experiences where they feel like something is sitting on their chest and they can see it, but they can't move. I've had multiple experiences where I could not move, and what I see, it looks very demonic. So that was one. Another one, I was at an old job that I was working, and I fell asleep at the desk. It was nighttime, and I had locked the office, and I was leaning back in my chair, and so I kind of had my arm like this and this one back, and I fell asleep like that, and woke up, and I was kind of paralyzed, and I saw what looked like a figure of a woman, and it reached out to me and literally went like this to my hand and said some words that I couldn't really understand. And another time was at that same job. Yeah, Frank, shame on you, sleeping at work. But there was times that I worked double, triple shifts, and they said it was okay to sleep. They even had a couch in the back so we could sleep, so it was no issue. But one night, or actually multiple nights, is what happened. But I remember one specific night going to the back and laying on the couch and falling asleep. And it had to been about 30 minutes past the time I fell asleep, and sometime around 3 a.m. And I woke up, but once again was paralyzed, and I was a little bit on my side this time. Usually people experience these things when they're laying on their back. When they fall asleep and wake up, they're on their back. But this time I was a little bit on my side, and I opened my eyes and I could not move at all. And there was, it sounded like a male voice, and it was screaming, "Get up, wake up." And so I'd have that experience a few times, but I remember that first night when that happened, it was pretty scary. So other nights where certain things happened, there was one of the videos I speak about something that I experienced with my son, and I'm going to go into detail about that story now. So this is going to go on the three stories that I want to tell you guys. So basically, I am in this little apartment, and it couldn't have been bigger than the room I'm in right now. And I had the bed in one corner, the doors right across the way, and right across from me over here is a kitchen area, and the fridge is over here, and then there's just a little tiny room where there was a bathroom, and that was it. So came nighttime one time in this property. I was staying, it was like a little farm area or something, and basically I I'm laying down and I'm trying to fall asleep, and my dog is sitting here next to me on my right hand side, and I have one of my sons. He's in the middle, and I have ex fiance of mine, or ex wife of mine rather, she's laying on the end, and they're both sleeping, and I'm just looking around because I just had a hard time sleeping, and I seen this shadow pop up on the right side of my little tiny apartment, and it was right in front of the fridge, and it was swaying back and forth, and I'm just staring at this thing like in disbelief. Now I've had experiences before, but this one was just, it was so defined. I can see it so good. And my dog is looking at it too, and out of nowhere my son just sits up and he points at this shadow and he says, "Daddy, look." And I'm telling him, "Shh, mommy's sleeping," because that's what he called her, mommy, at the time. But and I said, "Shh, mommy's sleeping," and he whispers, "Daddy, look." So I get out my phone and I start recording, but it was too dark, and the phones back then were just, even if you try to record on certain phones in the dark now, they're pretty crappy. But this, I could not see anything. You could just hear us. So I start recording, and he's pretty young, so I try to speak in a way where he could not quite get what I was saying, but at the same time get my point across to whatever was there. So me, my dog, and my son are looking at this thing, and I say, "If there's anything here in the room with us, please move to the other side of the room," something along those lines. And this thing goes from the right side of this little apartment to the left side. And as this happens, the dog, my son, and I quickly all look in the direction where we see it move. At the same time as it's moving, we're all turning our heads to look. And I'm a little back from where they are, so I can clearly see that our heads are moving at the same time. So, after that, I stop the video and I get my son to fall asleep. This thing disappeared. And so the next night, I pull out a candle and I put it on the table in front of me. And I'm there late at night just by myself. So I'm thinking, whatever this is, it might come to me. It could flicker. If I can find out if it's a man, a woman, or whatever it is, I'm going to figure it out. So I basically start asking questions and I start filming once again. Very horrible quality. I don't even have these videos anymore. That was so long ago. But I'm asking questions and it was flickering. And so about half an hour into that, I stopped and I just grabbed some water and like from the sink, and I pray over the water and ask God if he can just make it holy water. And I went around this whole property and I start blessing the property and telling whatever's there, they have to go, they can't be there anymore. And I get through the whole property and get to the front of the property. where the owners were staying. So what they did was they took this property and they cut it down into little units, and I was staying in, of course, one of them, and they were towards the front. And they had they meaning the landlady and the landlord. They had twin girls, and they were pretty young. They had to have been at that time about 11 years old. I would imagine they're grown now, but basically the owner comes out, and I see her coming out. Now it's late at night. Again, it's about 3 in the morning, and she seemed a little distraught. She seemed like something was bothering her, and she comes up to me, and I'm a smoker. I smoke cigarettes. So basically, she came up and asked me for a cigarette, which was kind of weird to me because I was there for a little while and I know she didn't smoke any cigarettes. So she asked me for one. I give it to her. I asked her if everything is okay. She said, "If I tell you what's been going on, you will not believe me." I said, "If I tell you what's been going on, you wouldn't believe me." And so she says, "Can I tell you?" And I said, "Yeah." So I give her the lighter. She lights her cigarette. She takes a hit, and she inhales very deeply and then lets it go like if she's a natural born smoker. And I've never seen this lady smoke in her life, so she's not choking or whatever. I was kind of surprised. But anyways, she goes on to tell me that for a while that there's something that's been visiting her daughter's room, and it would go from one bed and shake it and then scream and take off, and one of the girls would see it, and they would like wake up to the shaking and then see this thing, and then they would do a little scream and then take off, and and then the other girl would not see. So another night it would be that girl, and the other one wouldn't see, and the same thing would happen. It would shake the bed, and it'll do like this little screeching sound, little scream, and it would take off, and each girl would see it, but only at separate times. So basically, she said tonight was different. Tonight, basically this thing went to both of their beds and shook it so bad, and that she even heard the bed shaking in the room. She could hear it, and she hears them scream after they all hear this really loud scream, and it takes off. So I was telling her that the night before I seen something, my son saw something. I'm explaining the whole thing to her, and I told her what was happening that night, and that I went around the property and I was blessing the property. And so she said she thinks that whatever I did, I must have made it go away, and it was angry and shook the beds and whatnot, and just like got their attention, and took off. So, but this scream was different than the other nights, according to her. She said this was extremely loud. It was something that was audible to all of them in the house, and it wasn't like something that happened before. So, the next story, I was with an ex of mine, and this took place within about 3 nights. And the girl I was with, she got extremely sick out of nowhere. So, we take it like any other sickness, and we drink some little tea. I drank it with her, or the little flu stuff, and we basically drink that, and we're hoping for the best. And she goes to bed, and I'm laying next to her, and basically I can't sleep like usual. I have hyperthyroidism, so I'm always like very hyper. I can't stop moving. So in the nighttime, it's hard for me to sleep. So basically, I was like that then. I'm still like that now. I could not sleep. And I'm looking at the end of the bed, and I see a tall, dark figure, and it's kind of like standing there and swaying, and then it would jump and then land on top of her and sink into her and then pop up at the end of the bed. Now every time that it jumped on top of her and it sunk through, she would toss and turn and moan and groan. And after I seen it happen a few times, I get her up, just briefly say, "Hey, you okay?" And she says, "Yeah." She goes, "Yeah." And then she just turns back around, and goes back to sleep, and I'm looking at this thing at the end of the bed, and it continues to jump and whatever. So I'm thinking, I'm bugging, right? And because really, you see these kind of things, and or if you do, it's almost just it's unbelievable. It's almost to a point where you can't believe what you're seeing. So the next day came, and she was even more sick than the day before. And of course, she took medicine and whatnot, and same old thing happened. She got worse throughout the day, and then we go to bed, and again I cannot sleep. So I'm looking at the end of the bed where our feet are, and I see this thing again. And again, she's sleeping and it's jumping and it's landing on her and going through her and popping up at the end of the bed. And again, she is tossing and turning and moaning and groaning. And I just can't believe what I'm seeing. So again, I kind of shake her and ask her if she's okay. And she says, yeah, and turns back over. The same thing like the night before. But this night, I start praying and I ask God for whatever it is that's there in the room to please take it away. And I'm telling whatever it is to go away, and it went away. The next day, she started looking like she was getting better. So was thinking, okay, maybe it was whatever this was latched onto her. This is the most sense I could make out of it. Whatever it was latched onto her was making her sick, and now it's gone and she's better. So come afternoon time, and she's sicker than she was the past 2 days. So I knew there was something wrong. I just couldn't figure out what it was. So basically, I did not say anything to her, but just waited for that night to see what was going to happen. And I was extremely anxious because not knowing what's going to happen, these things are showing up in the house, and I just really didn't know what to do. But, anyways, the night comes, and she's extremely sick, and she's laying next to me. And I didn't get sick. Nobody else in the house got sick. It wasn't something that was contagious. I mean, to us, it was obvious it wasn't contagious because nobody got sick. It was just her. So this night she's even more sick, and there was this thing popped up at the end of the bed. Same thing. It was huge, and it was a dark figure, and it was swaying back and forth. And this time it came with something else, but that something else was on my side, and it was smaller, and it was darker, and it was it stood perfectly still. I'm talking about dark, real dark. And it just stood still, and I just see it make a hand motion to this other tall dark figure right next to it, almost like a hand motion like this, sort of like if it was signaling this thing to go ahead. Oh man, my heart is dropping right now because it was just an intense moment. But I see it make the hand motion, and then this thing starts jumping on her, sinking, and popping back up. And the same thing, she's tossing and turning. But this night, just like the second night, it was getting more intense. But this night, it was even more intense than the first and the second night of her tossing and turning and this thing jumping into her. And I'm talking about it got to a point where when it jumped on her, she was jolting. You could feel this thing literally jumping on her and affecting her in some type of way. So I pray and I ask for whatever it is to go away. And it disappeared. But the thing that was next to it scooted over to her side, and it was doing the same thing that one was, except it seemed like it was doing it more aggressively and faster. And it was going faster and faster and just jumping and landing and sinking and popping back up, and faster than I can even say it. It was just doing this, just like a circle. It just kept jumping on her, and it was horrible. And I pray and I pray and I pray, and it continued. And then I say, come and get me, you Which we're not supposed to be cursing, guys. So please try to leave all those nasty words out of your vocabulary. But I was so angry, and so I say, "Come get me, you mother, whatever." And this thing scooted over to my side, and I'm laying down, but my head is kind of tilted that way, so I'm looking at what's going on, and this thing just like slid from my feet over to me, to my face, and it took both of its hands, which felt like claws, and it pushed down on my chest, and it pushed down so hard that I could barely breathe. And I just say, "Go away," and it just took off. Now, the next day, the woman was fine, and I told her about what was happening for the past 3 nights. And then I didn't even get to the part of what happened with this thing crawling on top of me. And I always go shirtless because it's always so hot in Florida. So I didn't have a shirt on as usual. And she saw these marks on my chest that looked like something had pushed, like, something must have grabbed me or pushed me or something that dug into me. And I then told her about what happened at the end. So that was another experience. And a third story I'm going to give you, and I'm also going to give you a warning with this story. And the warning is not to tamper with things on the other side. And what I mean by that is there's this whole spiritual realm that kind of exists at the same time as we exist. Now, there's things that we cannot see with the naked eye. There's certain things that we can, and there's certain things that we cannot. Certain people can see, and certain people cannot see. So basically, there's a way to communicate. You got Ouija boards, you have pendulums, you have all these different ways of communicating with the other side, which is not Uncle Tom once again. He is sleeping, guys. It is something demonic. It is these things that's been roaming around, that's waiting for the day of judgment, just like everything else and everyone else is waiting for it. So, my foolish self, once upon a time, got into the pendulum. And if you don't know what this is, it's basically something, an object hanging on, whether it's a string or a chain or whatever the case, and then you ask questions. It swings a certain way for a yes, for a no, and for a maybe. So, another girl I was with, and I mentioned it to her, and she thought I was playing around, and for some reason I thought it was a bright idea to prove it to her. And I did, but she thought I was kind of fooling around, and basically she ends up trying it herself, but denies it, of course. So I had this program I had to go to, and I was taking the bus to get there, and I heard a voice that said she's doing it, and I automatically had the vision in my head of what was happening. So I call her, and she forwards my call, and I hear the voice again say she's doing it, and I see the picture in my head of her doing it, and I call her again, and she picks up the phone. I said, "What are you doing?" And she says, "Nothing." And I said, "What are you doing? You're doing that thing right now, aren't you?" And she said, "No, I'm not." And then she says, "Okay, I gotta go." She hangs up the phone, and basically she doesn't call back or anything like that. I go back to the house after finishing this program, and she looks sick as a dog. I'm talking about, she was drenched in sweat from head to toe, and she looked horrible. And I asked her if she was okay, and she says, "I just don't feel well." And she said she was heading to bed early, which to me was kind of strange because she was a night owl. She would stay awake way later than me. So, anyways, it was kind of late at night, so I get to bed and wake up in the morning. She's still in the same position. And I look over at her, and I see that she looks worse than she was the night before. So I said, "Hey, are you okay?" And she was awake, and she says, I lied to you. I told you I didn't do that, and I did do it." And I said, "You see, I knew it." And she says, "Yes, Frankie, help me. It feels like something's sitting on my chest." So I get up right away. I go to the bathroom. I fill up a cup with some water, and excuse me, it was a bowl. I fill up this little bowl with water, and I pray and I ask God to bless the water, turn it to holy water, and I go through the house and I start sprinkling and I start praying and telling whatever it is that it has to leave, and I'm going room to room doing this. And basically trying to get rid of this. Now I'm going to go back to the phone call. Okay, so when I seen this in my head and I heard the voice say that she's doing it, and I see this, I call her. She tells me that basically she was doing it, and what she did was she started and she asked if there was something there with her, and it said yes. And she said, "Are you good?" And it said no. And she said, "Are you evil?" And it said yes. And then she says, "Go away." In the midst of that, I call and she denies the call. So then she tries it again. And she says, "Is there anything here with me?" And it says yes. And then she says, "Are you good?" And it kind of was like going in a motion where it's like, I don't know. And then she asked again, "Are you good?" And it said yes. And then she says, "Are you evil?" And it swung hard yes. So she said, "Go away." And then she picks up the phone. And then I mention it to her that she's doing whatever, and she denies it. So that's basically what happened. So now back to the part where I'm blessing the house. So I'm going around the house and I'm blessing the house, and I get to this little area where she has all her nail stuff, because she did nails and whatnot. So I go there, I'm sprinkling the water, praying, go to the kitchen, sprinkling the water, praying, and I get to the living room area. Now, when I moved in, I had this little coin and it had an angel on it. And I basically dipped that in the water before I even came to this house. I blessed the house, and I take this coin and I put it in somewhere in a corner where nobody can see it. And I like I said, I blessed the coin and said, "Please protect," which I don't believe these things protect your house. It's just once upon a time I thought this, and it was ridiculous. But anyways, so this coin, I realized that it's in the middle of the floor in the living room. Not only is it on the floor, it's burnt. I'm talking about charred black burnt. And so I go and I'm trying to scrub it, and I take that little bit of water and I'm pushing it on it, and nothing was working, nothing was coming out. But I basically go bless the rest of the house, and I get to her, and I felt such an energy being pulled and sucked from me. I just felt like there was so much darkness around me. And I get over her and I'm praying and I'm sprinkling the water, and I do the cross symbol on her with the water, and all at once she sits up, and it looked like she was never even sick. At that point I dropped down to my knees and I felt so weak. It was a scary feeling. It felt like just all this energy was sucked out of me. So she thanks me and whatnot, and I told her to never mess with that stuff again. And I don't know at this point in time what she is doing or whether she still messes around with that, but as of the last time I checked, uh, she was, and that's pretty unfortunate. But we all have a walk to take, like I said before. Now, the point of all this was to let you know that there is something out there that can be explained. A lot of people feel like, oh, it can't be explained, and I'm telling you, I know what it is. I've experienced it, and I'm here to warn you guys about these things. Do not play around with these things. They're not toys. Okay, they're here to separate you from God. They're here to kill, steal, and destroy, and they are out for your blood, seriously. And you have to watch out for these things. Now, as you heard, these things can physically move objects. They can physically touch you and hurt you. So it's not a game. This is nothing to play with. So be wary of your surroundings and the things that you do, and because you might attract certain things. Now, I'll give you guys a couple of bonuses. Now, over time, my current wife, has experienced certain things that I didn't even realize that those certain things had attached to me. So that thing that was screaming in the back office at my old job, she heard from time to time was screaming, and then I end up telling her the story, and she matches it up and like, hey, I hear that same screaming and I hear the same words from something that sounds like a man saying, get up. And then we were also having an experience of the bed shaking, and we didn't even put two and two together until we experienced it at the same time. The same time the bed started shaking, and we're about to go to bed and we're about to do our little prayer and whatnot. And I'm laying on one side, she's laying on another side, and we feel shaking in between the both of us. And I didn't mention anything, but she ends up saying, are you shaking the bed? And I said, no, I thought you were shaking the bed. And she said, no. And we both feel it stop. I didn't say anything just to see what she says. And she says, it stopped. And I said, it did stop. I said, so you felt it too? You felt that shaking? And she said, yeah. I said, that's the shaking I've been feeling. Then we end up having this like ding, this light go off and saying, you know what? That's probably the same thing that was at that one house, that story that you told me, Frank. That's what I think it is. And we came to an agreement there. So, and till today I still see certain things. So they're out there, and these things can attach to you. If you're not walking with God, these things will try to tear your life down. And even if you're walking with God, they hate that. And they're going to try to attack you, but stay strong in the faith. It is impossible to please God without faith. And some things it takes a little extra prayer, and it takes sometimes fasting. If you don't know about that, sometimes you have to fast. Sometimes you got to pray just a little extra, and you can get rid of these things. But anyways, I love you guys, and I hope that you guys have absorbed all of this. And I'm going to be hitting you guys with another video soon. Hope you guys enjoyed this one. God bless you, and I will see you guys as soon as possible. Bye.